Today's podcast is a big one. We are talking with Professor Julien Mirivel, who is one of the world's top experts in relationship building theory and positive communication. This episode is full of science-backed insights to transform how you connect, how you attract, and how you build deep connections with women. There will be a lot of things to learn, and you don't want to miss this. So enjoy the podcast. Hello guys. Today I have a very interesting guest with me today, and that is Professor Julien Mirivel, who is one of the world leading expert in relationship building theory made into practice, also known as positive communication. So welcome to my show, Julien.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm so glad to be spending the hour with you and talking with you about something I really care about, which is human relationships.
So when it comes to actually building human relationships, which means basically all relationships, whether it is a man to a woman in a romantic setting, or if it's just making friends in a social setting, or if it is about professional environment, uh, I think building relationship all share the same scientific foundation, doesn't it?
Yes. So in my work really looks at, so one thing I want to say about relationship is this, that we know from the discipline of communication that's really important to what you're really speaking about, which is there's an intricate, intimate, inherent connection between communication and relationship. So I'm a communication professor, and what I want really people to understand about the way relationships are is that they are created, sustained, maintained, built through communication. And so you can't really separate the world of relating from the world of communicating. And the beautiful thing about that, if you really understand that, is that if you improve your communication, you inherently improve your relationships.
Yeah. So thank you so much, by the way, for giving me a lot of coaching in this area to really enhance my own ability to talk with other people and build relationships. And what I've noticed also is like once your conversational skills are there, which are based on different elements that make conversations great, the relationship for the other person based on that person feels seen, heard, and all those great things that should include in the conversation just automatically become, what can I say, it becomes like an automated effect, you see. So building relationship is not something that is forced, it's something that is like an outcome of your great skills in conversations. Is that also what you're trying to say in some way? It's like an outcome.
Yeah, I love the way you put it. So I think sometimes we focus so much on, getting the outcome that we're really focused on. But what really matters in the world of relationship, what I hear you saying is the process. It's what people do. And within the relationship that then creates, for example, the opportunity to really connect, the opportunity to really understand another person, the opportunity to have a meaningful connection. The way I like to describe it is pretty simple. If you have poor communication, then you're going to have poor quality relationships. That's a direct connection. But if you have high quality communication behaviors, you're going to have high quality relational experiences. And so I do think what you're saying is right on point in the sense that, if we focus so much on the outcome, then what we are doing is we're actually creating a relationship where we're treating the other person as an object, right? We're like, I'm just trying to get to this outcome. I'm just trying to get to this place. And you're the means there. So right away, you would be starting on the wrong platform. To change that, you've got to think, you know what? And I think we've talked about this, Michael, but I really want to get to know this person. I want to get a sense of who they are, and I'm interested in them, and I'm curious, genuinely curious about them. Am I making sense here?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right on the spot. And the way you describe, like, if we focus about the outcome, then we make the conversations instrumental. So we suddenly,
That's right.
instead of actually making a connection with the other person, we start using instrumental language, which is something that doesn't make you a skillful conversationalist. You're just good at talking in the script based way. And that is what we have seen in the dating space for so many years, in the past, all the way up till now, when people trying to promote the idea of having scripted conversations with women in order to get from A to B and B to C, instead of actually being skillful enough to understand the other person and then go along with it, based on your curiosity, genuine curiosity to really find out about her. So I get your point. I think that is what the whole dating space have been struggling with for so many years as well. So out of curiosity, let's say now that you have a guy that now going to meet a woman that he finds attractive and beautiful, and he just want to make the best possible impression on that first meeting. So
Yeah.
what 1 minute tip would you give that guy? Like your app to, there's a lot of things obviously, but if you have 1 minute, what would be the most important tip you would give him?
So, I mean, lots. And I would say, I'm not an expert in giving dating advice typically, but I think what we learn about the way communication works is this. So, my first tip would be um, make your intention, which is what you've just described, make your intention about creating a real connection. So, that's critical, being willing to be there. So, in the model of positive communication that I have developed, I typically focus on very simple behaviors that can help people improve the way that they communicate. In the first one, in that behavior is called greeting. When we greet, I have argued in my work, we have the ability to create connection. So one of the basic challenges of relationship is that we can never really get rid of is we have an impulse to want to connect, and then we have an impulse to want to withdraw. So the first kind of, I think the most critical is actually just having the courage to initiate that connection, to be willing to be in the world of relationship instead of withdrawing, instead of shying away from it. You make a move. Now, that probably leads to a lot of other questions. Like, once I've made the contact, what do I do, right? And I think your most powerful tool for good communication is your ability to ask open-ended questions. Things like, tell me about yourself. What do you really love to do? And to move. So our tendency when we study people, we do learn that they're just very good at closing down the interaction. They use closed-ended questions. Things like, are you having a good day? Okay, then it just becomes yes or no. And so the interaction feels it's just closing down on you rather than, well, tell me what you really love to do. You see, now we've moved into kind of an exploratory process. So I'll stop here. But for me, those are two key moves: your ability to initiate connection. And you want to do that obviously with warmth, with interest, with genuineness, with authenticity. And then second is using questions, but really grounded in this deep sense of being curious about other people. And when you do that, the relationship will change. If you become curious about the other person, maybe they'll become curious about you. And now you've transformed what feels like a difficult interaction into something you would probably genuinely enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, that is also what I truly emphasizing, because all data points out that before you actually taking the step further and trying to make things more romantic and so on, we need to establish that safety and trust first, which is based on connection. And
Yeah.
and many of the advice I give you, and thank you for all those advice you have given me as well to enhance that particular area. But it is sure to make sure that the other person um, feel like you are interested in them as persons. So one of the best thing to do on the first possible meeting they have, and also the meetings that follow, is to be genuinely interested towards the other person in depth.
Absolutely.
So in order to take things to depth, we have to ask open-ended questions in the right way to spark the energy for her to actually tell more than just yes, no, maybe, good, nice. So we really want to go into this area. Uh, so you were spot on. So guys, listen to this. This is so valuable because we want to really break down all those myths of you being, you trying to brag, you're trying to impress, you're trying to be funny and playful, somewhat. But in order to build real relationship, is based on emotional connection first. We need to feel connected with the other person before we can take to the next step. That is what the whole scientific research and principles are leaning towards when it comes to
That's
human
correct.
interaction and relationships. So based on my experience when it comes to the dating field, but also in general communication, conversational skills, and so on, rhetoric,
Yeah,
the way of convincing and all that, what I've come across is the lack of both knowledge and the skill set when it comes to relationship building theory, also known as positive communication, which is a part of interpersonal communication realm, which is
that's
designed
correct.
to build relationships. So why is that a forgotten skill amongst the public? Because if I asked your colleague Alexander Lyon, also one of my main advisor, and he thought that if we go into a room with maybe 100 people, maybe one, maximum two people knows about this kind of skills, while the rest of
Yeah.
them just doesn't know. How come that this is a forgotten skill amongst the public, you think?
I mean, there's probably a lot of pressure. I think, like recently, I've been talking to people about the fact that we have to realize that communication skills are like a muscle. And we feel it inherently when we talk about a second language, right? You ask anybody if they took Spanish in high school and you ask them to speak Spanish, they're like, I can't do it. I've forgotten my skills. Well, that's the purest example that communication skills are like a muscle. If we do not use it, we lose it. This is a real thing. So if you look at the state of the world today, where 1 in 4 people in the world feels either very or fairly lonely, or you look at data, for example, that shows that 47% of US adults believe that other people cannot be trusted, then those are going to influence our ability even to just initiate connection, right? So earlier I talked about how important that is, that movement. Am I willing to move in closer to people, or am I withdrawing from interaction? And every day we make thousands of little choices like that. If I'm going to go grab coffee here and where I live in Little Rock, am I saying hi to people at the place, or am I ignoring them? Am I on my phone, right? The more we don't use our communication skills, the more we're going to lose them. And the second thing I would say, Michael, is that just like any art, to me, I think of communication as a science, but also as an art. Just like any other art, in order to be good at that art, you have to learn theory, you have to learn practice, you have to learn techniques, right? And most people are not doing that. Most people are not studying communication. Most people are not reading some of the most important concepts and theories in that discipline. So when I teach and work with my students, what I try to do is I try to develop their theoretical understanding of communication. And then I try to get them to understand the practical, to increase and improve their practical understanding of communication, because that's how we can build our skills. So to summarize, first, I think we're actually losing our ability to communicate effectively because of so many forces around us, particularly the use of technology and social media. And to be honest, our decreased sense of courage in that way. And then the second thing, which is that we have both, there's a lot to learn, both skill sets that we have to practice and a lot of knowledge that's available that can deepen your understanding of interpersonal communication.
Mm-mm. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. But what something that actually surprised me is that when there are a lot of resources out there, but people have to have that interest to look for those resources, because there is no one who says that, oh, you know what, if you want to be a great person that can build relationship with others, listening skills is number one. No one is
Yeah.
saying that. Basically, there is like you have to be really, really interested in this field in order to be able to actually learn it, because that information is not given to you, because there is not no such information anywhere. So if I want to talk with people that think they're good at communication and conversation and all that. They will just go
Sure.
ahead and start talk about rhetorical things like how to make a great sell, and so on, how
Yeah.
to close the deals and so on. So another question then, that is a follow-up question basically, is that how rare do you think conversational skills is in a proper way? Like, you're proficient in conversational skills. How rare is that skill, would you say?
I mean, um, I don't know how rare it is. I think that inherently, many people can communicate in ways to manage their everyday lives. Okay. And that include, like working and, managing your daily activities. I think what people have a hard time doing, to be honest, Michael, is they have a harder time knowing how to create high quality connection.
Mhm.
That's the difference. So we can have average skills, right? But to improve the way we interact, suddenly we have to learn different ways of being and different ways of doing. And our past experience is not enough. We have to literally improve the way we think, and we have to improve the way we do things. And that's not easy to do, just like it's not easy to learn martial arts, or it's not easy to become a painter. So
No.
you may have the ability to like move your hands, right, and your fingers, but that does
Mhm.
not make you a great player of the piano. you know
For sure not. For sure not. Yeah,
so
I get the
for
point.
sure not. So communication is like that. We do a lot of it, but
Mm,
and sometimes we do succeed. So part of what I study is the way people sometimes do succeed in doing these things. And I
mm.
want to learn from these moments. So can we then learn a new set of skills that's going to help us create high quality connections? That's what I'm after. I'm after
Mm.
not just how can we have relationships, how can we move from surface level relationships to meaningful relationships? And what are the behaviors that are the driving force of that?
That leads to the second question. And there is
Okay.
no, so for example, when it comes to the elements that make conversations great, which also act as a foundation for building relationships, um, effective listening skills is definitely one of the heavier one. um,
Absolutely.
and that is one of the most effective ways to build relationships, if not the most effective way to make the other person feel heard and seen, which is connecting based approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I would instead say, how many people do you think can listen proficiently? So we narrow it down. Do you think that the average person can really listen to the other person in a way that actually is proficient in your standard of being a good conversationalist? I think it's
I
one in
think,
100 maybe, but I don't know.
yeah, it's probably very low. We'd have to look at it. Um, I think we have the capacity within us to listen deeply. It's just sometimes we don't know how to do it, and sometimes we also don't have the patience to do it. Great article that was kind of a fun article that they were looking at using listener bots, right? Like chat GPT bots for listening. And so
Yeah.
the big question was, how come everybody's using chat GPT to listen to their problems? What makes chat such a better listener than a human being? And the basic thing is that chat does not get impatient. Chat gives you its whole attention, right? So the same skills that made the experience of being listened to through that technology are actually the skills that we need to embody if we're going to become better listener. Um, and there are a couple of them. So deep listening includes being fully open to the other's experience. It means being fully present, physically, mentally. It feels being there, right? It feels like you're interested in the other person's well-being. And there's a great concept by the psychologist Carl Rogers called unconditional positive regard. I love that term. And what the term means is regard is the way I approach people. Okay. It comes from the French regarder. So I'm looking at you in a particular
Mm.
way. Warmth is positive. So unconditional positive regard. So positive simply means I approach you with warmth. And then unconditional means I have no conditions for determining who you are. I accept you with the complexity of being a human being. That concept has essentially created a revolution in the field of therapy. Anytime you see a therapist or a
Mm.
counselor, they are trying to embody unconditional positive regard, because we know that when the therapist behaves in that way, it actually allows the patient to heal. Same thing in the world of relationship. In deep listening, if we can put ourselves in that position to be open, to be fully present, to approach other people with unconditional positive regard, you're going to notice right away. I see it with my students every time. When they practice these skills, their relationships are changing, right? This is what I started at the beginning. You improve your communication, you improve your relationships. It will be instantaneous.
Yeah, as an outcome, which is
Yep.
as an outcome. So many times when I teach my clients how to be a better listener, because everything you told me now about the warmth and the openness is like
Yeah.
you make a decision. So many times I say like you have to make a conscious decision to give the
Yep.
other person your undivided attention.
That's
It's like
correct.
a decision that you can make. If you make that decision and you stick with that decision, you get a lot less self-aware, and the only thing you think about now is to focus on the other person. Would you say that that is goes a little bit aligned to what you just said as a mindset? Basically, it's a strong mindset.
Absolutely. I do think so. Yes, absolutely. That we make the, I like the way you put it. You have to place your mindset. You're going to have to make the decision. It is a choice. Listening is a choice. And there are variables around us that sometimes prevent us from listening effectively. And sometimes there are barriers within us. So I
Mm,
don't think that, they're there, obviously, but we can overcome most of these barriers by being intentional, by practicing. So, one thing, I have a colleague here with whom I've been for years. Okay. I've known him for 20 years, and he teaches listening. And I have seen him over the years just work on his skills. And when you're with him, you feel like you're the only person who matters. But he's working on that skill for the last 20 years,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
he
It
hasn't
is.
stopped. He's
No,
never
no.
assumed, oh, I got it, I'm a great listener. No, he has kept practicing his craft, learning
Mm,
to find ways of including people, learning to make his impulse not about him but about you. And
no.
that changes the experience that he has, and changes the experience that if I'm in that conversation with him, totally, I'm now in a different realm of connection with him.
Yeah. So when you say that, what the first thing I'm thinking about now is like he understands the elements to listen to. So there are basically two things that I use to put two categories I use to put into listening. It's like first you need to know what to listen to. So you want to
Sure.
understand the underlying reason of things. So if
Yeah.
someone say I like Paris, for example, and
Yeah.
and a person tried to listen to it, okay, he acknowledged that she now we're talking about the lady, she likes Paris. Let's say she likes Paris, but what is the underlying reason of why she liked Paris? So when she
Yeah.
say Paris, what comes to her mind? And I think that is the way of actually taking things to depth, if you are good at asking questions that are tailored to take things into depth. And I think that is like the first category of actually acknowledge all the key phrases and keywords and try to understand the underlying meaning. And then the second part is to understand the whole picture. So it's like those two things in balance. And I think that of every person that I've been coaching, and we're talking about people that have worked as a lawyer, some people that
Yeah.
work as a psychologist as well, they are not that school as people think many times, and they are missing out on the underlying reasons of things that was mentioned in a sentence. and
Yeah.
and I think that a great listener is the one that can identify all the cues in a sentence that require more information in order to you to understand that person. Because
That's
without
correct.
asking that particular thing, you won't be able to get the understanding of the other person, which means that it's very hard to get into the deep area of conversation that where things matters. Would you say that that is something that you also emphasizing on in your, at the
Yeah, I
university
think
and
I would.
applied science?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would get at it in slightly different ways. But like for example, earlier when you were just talking about, um, if somebody says, "Oh, I really love Paris," well, great, you're right. There's so much to discover there, right?
Mm,
And so I would focus on, well, what's your next question? And the next question might be a simple. My favorite is just tell me more about why that is. Why is Paris your favorite city? Now, I would want to know that. I'm French. Paris is my
Yeah,
favorite city, right?
yeah,
So I would want to connect with that. So I do think that move of asking the other person to give you more, as simple as asking, again, I've done this 1,000 times. If I just say, tell me more about why that is for you, then that's all you have to do. Then the other person will just let and they will share. Um, and as you pointed out, listening does require an attentiveness to both the details and kind of the broader context. But I think most people can manage that if we kind of go back to this ultimate intention. And the intention is, I want to learn about you. I want to get to know you, and I want to discover you. And I'm going to go about doing that rather than closing down the interaction. What's your favorite color? Boom.
Mhm.
Now the interaction is done. Tell me more about why you love Paris. And suddenly you're in a whole different conversation. And that's where the connection is really going to take place from my vantage point.
Yeah, because I think that once they, as we saw from studies as well, specifically in women, but when they are talking in depth, and the depth starts when they going to explain to you not what they think about it, but the underlying reason of why they think it's beautiful, why they think it's exciting, the underlying reason. That is when things start happening. As soon as they start answering that question, we go into the deeper layer of the conversation. And I feel like that is the only place where the conversation actually matters, when it becomes influential. Because the exchange of information on the surface based level is something we're doing so many times during the day that we are immune to just acknowledge information.
Right.
We don't feel anything of acknowledged information. And therefore, when guys want to date women, for example, and they just go in with superficial questions and get one word answer here and there, they are just playing with the surface. They are not getting into depth of of what that human being is all about. You see, and there are so many things to explore when you really put your mind into it. As you said, open mind. So, but now also, I read a book that says that a great conversationalist asks about 25 to 30 more questions than the normal person.
Yeah, I
Um,
wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great data.
yeah, and when it comes to asking questions for discovery, what I noticed many times is that many times it's like people learn how to ask open-ended questions. They go out there to try to make people feel good by asking questions, and they want a reply. Sometimes when people really try to learn asking questions, it become like a one-way street. It's almost like
Hmm.
they make the other person feel interviewed instead of having a collaborative conversations. What would you
Sure.
say? How can we not doing that? How can we not making it sound like an interview?
Well, there's probably lots of ways of doing that. I mean, I think, it's an interesting thing because being a good communicator means that you become more intentional, but at the same time that you apply those skills, you become more free to allow the dynamic process of relating unfold. So it's like if you keep forcing the same skill, then it's going to naturally move the interaction in a direction that is framing the moment as an interview, right? So you need to allow the space for the other person to also reciprocate, to also engage with you so that you are in a conversation. So, I mean, what I wouldn't do, for example, is I wouldn't have 10 questions ready and make sure that I'm getting at these 10 questions. That's going to make the interaction feel like you're following an interview protocol. Great to have a few questions ready to go. Awesome preparation, but you're going to have to let go of many of them. So you have to be free. It's like you want to plan, but you don't want to plan so much that then you become you lose flexibility. Is that kind of making sense,
Yeah, it
Michael?
makes absolute sense.
Yeah. So I would say, yes, be prepared. If you're meeting somebody new, it can be helpful to think, you know what, I really want to know these things about this person. and I'm interested in maybe her life experiences and maybe places that they've traveled to that have really shaped their experiences, and maybe what are they dreaming about for their future. Like maybe that's what I would do. Like these are three big questions that I want to put on the table, and then I would allow for the other person to also be intrigued in you. I think if you ask them about their experiences, like travels that they've had that they really enjoy, very likely, if the conversation is good, they will reciprocate. What about you? And now you're in a dialogue. You're not,
Yeah.
focusing on this outcome of trying to impress this other person. You're
Yeah,
focusing on building the connection.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, not trying to impress, because I heard that if there is something that can kill the connection is by bragging and trying to impress. It's it's almost like an indirect word of trying to make the other person lower than yourself.
Yeah,
And then suddenly the focus is not on them anymore; it's on you, and then suddenly you lost the connection part. But
absolutely.
one
Yeah.
of the things that I notice is really effective is actually the sharing part. So I know that open-ended question is the key for making it go in deeper levels. But many times, what I noticed based on thousands and thousands of my own approaches, I've done going cold approaches, talking with women and start a conversation with them, is to set up with a closed-ended questions. So I have the opportunity to take the one-word answer and then share something about myself based on that one-word answer, short and concise, to set up the open-ended questions. So if I would ask a woman, for example, I said, "Excuse me, I know this is spontaneous, but I saw you and I have a question," and she say, "Yeah, how's your day?" I mean, that is a closed-ended question. So she will either say good, not so good, it's fine. That's basically the three answers I get. So let's say she say fine now. She say fine. Then I go and say, she say, well, fine. My day is fine. I will go in and say, like, you know what? My day is fine too. Because today I went to the gym, which I haven't gone to for a long time. And I feel so productive today. And that makes me happy. I like when I do progress in life. But I'm curious, when you say fine, what do you actually mean?
Yeah.
So suddenly it's almost like I'm forcing the the two ways communication right on the spot. You see. So what do you say about the collaborative thing? Um,
Yeah. So one thing I was, when you were talking, I mean, I think so far we've talked about two key behaviors, and those are featured in my model, right? So, well,
yeah.
three, I would say. The first one was greeting, which is initiating connection. The second one is asking questions.
Mm.
And the third one that we talked about is listening. So in my model, if you look at the positive communication
Yeah.
framework, those are three principles. When you greet, you have the ability to create connection.
Mm.
When you ask, you have the ability to discover what you do not know. When you listen, you have the ability to transcend the perceived differences that exist between you and other people. But the behavior you're pointing out here that is critical in the world of relationships is disclosing. And in my model, I argue that when you disclose genuinely, authentically, that you can actually deepen the relationships that you have with other people. This comes from a theory. Can I get a little nerdy
Yeah,
here?
go
So
ahead.
this
Very
comes from a
interesting.
theory called social penetration theory, developed years ago. But what social penetration theory essentially showed was that what builds intimacy in romantic relationships is the fact that in every connection we have, we make decisions about what to disclose, how deeply to disclose, and what topics we both engage in and avoid. So it's the combination, the very complex combination of surface, depth, variety, or singular topics that then shape, well, this is why my relationship with Michael is different from my relationship with my friend Jeff, which is
Mhm.
different from my relationship with my wife Meg, et cetera, et cetera. It's the disclosing both amount, type, level, etc. And that is what intimacy is. So, what I love about social penetration theory is that it reminds us very clearly that connecting, building closeness is not separated from communication. What creates closeness is our ability to reveal what we think. So, disclosing, I think of it that way. We reveal what we think, we reveal what we know, and we reveal how we feel. Those are three key sets of behaviors. And Alex, who I know, we sometimes do training
Yeah.
together. And when we do trainings, he'll say, I always let him say, because I love it, but he always says, disclosing is like the magic wand of relationships, because out of all the behaviors, it's the one, if it's done well, typically other people will reciprocate. So if I share a little bit about my experiences with you, Michael, then
Mhm.
very likely you are to share your experiences with me. And the beauty, I'm going to come back to this, but the beauty is not that you shared, and the beauty is not that I shared. The beauty is that when we do it, that's where the connection comes from. That's where the feeling of like, oh, Michael and I are more similar, or we have something in common, or we love to talk about communication. Suddenly, that becomes part of why we feel like we are connected.
Yeah, that is the part I call like gravitating towards common interest. So this is like
Yeah.
the world of reciprocity. It's like a reciprocity effect.
Yeah.
We belong with each other, and it's something. So there are like two ways I see reciprocity. One is like we belong to each other because, as you mentioned, now that we are like emerging, we like we have common interest, and we have common interest in depth. We can feel each other in that area. And then we have also like, since I'm so curious about you, I I giving you the vibe that I like you, and therefore it's easy for the other person to reciprocate back that, you know what, I like him too. You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that is the point where the outcome becomes like we build relationships, also we build this connection as an outcome, because
Yeah.
it's a lot of processing in the brain that makes us feel close to someone, and I think that that is part of it actually. As you say, would you say that that is reciprocity? You mean it's reciprocity,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So so now let's move on to the next question, and that is like
Okay.
what you meant in the earlier stage, like this intellectual competence versus practical competence. And I think that there are a pretty big difference between those two. You can really be very proficient in all this intellectually. You can write, you can do a lot of things, but then when they're trying to use it like a demonstration, they just can't pull it off naturally, because when you can do it naturally, that is when you have done that 10,000 times basically, and now you're going to do it 10,001 time, and then based on a lot of trial and errors, what did I do good, what did I do bad, how can I improve, all those 10,000 times. I'm just saying 10,000 because that is what Malcolm Gladwell liked to state in his book, that
Yeah.
you need
Sure.
10,000
Sure.
repetition in order to be good. But that is, you take it with a grain of salt. But so the process up to this 10,000 times, a lot of trials and error makes you practical competent. You see, so
Hmm.
you have the preparation of using the right scientific theory, and now you
Yep.
have to turn it into practice, and that is when all those repetition is there building this up. Um, would you say that in order to become really great at practical competence, you need some kind of a habituation process for each behavior, right? So
Yeah. So me and you think exactly alike on this, So I think, first, I do think that improving the way you think about communication, so what you describe are kind of like the theoretical background, right? That you need to improve your knowing. That is separate from being able to do it. So there's a difference between knowing and
mm,
doing, especially in the world of communication. And sometimes we even know what to do, but as you're pointing out, we either choose not to do it, or we realize when we get in the situation, we actually cannot do it at all. So,
yeah.
you know, so it does take repetition. Again, I think we think similar in that way, because when I developed, this model here that I've shown with you,
Mm, mm,
which
mm.
is widely available online now, but I was trying to identify the foundational habits, to use your language, that I thought people could practice their whole lives. And so what is that, right? So the first one, and you've talked about this before, that you've initiated contact with many women to build your
Mm.
experience, right? And that's my first move. In the model I talk about, when you greet, you have the ability to create connection. So what's the behavior that I want people practicing and thinking about? It's greeting. It's
Mm, mm.
starting interaction. It's initiating contact. And you can think it, but when you are at the coffee shop and you see somebody you want to talk to, do you say hello? Do you start the interaction? That's the difference between knowing and doing. And or for example, I appreciate you reached out to me and we got connected and now we're engaging in this conversation. So same thing. That requires somebody initiating the move, somebody making the first move to get in the realm of connection. That's something you can practice your whole life.
Yeah.
So what I've tried to do in my work is design habits that are like, instead of withdrawing, move in. But then you can accelerate those skills. So I'll give you some examples with greeting. You can greet in English or you can greet in French. Or you can greet, if I go to Saudi Arabia, do I know how to say assalamu alaikum? If I go to India, do I know how to say namaskar? If I go to, China, am I able to start the interaction with ni hao? And that alone, that little move will change your knowledge, which then gets into the doing, will change the way you experience relationships. So all of my behaviors in the model, they are designed to be fundamental habits: greeting, asking, complimenting. We haven't talked a lot about this one today, but complimenting for me is really critical because it's about seeing strength in people. The fourth behavior is disclosing. The fifth behavior is encouraging. And the last behavior is listening.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, yes, there are lots left to learn. But if you focus on these 6 behaviors, you've got your challenge cut out for you because they're not that easy.
So that is basically a very strong foundation of a skill set that will basically build great relationships. Basically,
that's what I would argue. Yeah.
So when I listen to all those behaviors, I have a little bit different behaviors as well in my model.
Okay.
But obviously, compliments is very important as well when you have context to give a compliment. You
Sure,
see?
absolutely. I like that you said that. Yeah.
Many times I've seen guys giving women physical compliments, which actually backfires because they are so immune to those compliments because they heard them since they were 14 years old all the way up, that they are pretty, blah 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 blah, cute, adorable, and blah blah blah. So one of the most important things is to actually have context to give compliments, especially in the area of dating, dating and women and so on. But would you say that once you get the habit of all those behaviors in neuroscience, since I have a master in behaviorism, we call that experience dependent plasticity. Like so when you have experience dependent plasticity, meaning habit in different behaviors, when you put them together, you become something psychologists are calling cognitive flexible. You see? So learning one behavior and make it automatic doesn't make you cognitive flexible, meaning that it doesn't come automatic. It's like when it comes automatic, when you're cognitive flexible, you don't even have to think. It just comes automatically. You know how to greet, you know how to give compliments, you know how to listen. Everything is just there without you even thinking. You just going to apply all that as the way you are. You see? Would you say that because according to neuroscientists, they say that having normal conversations with other people in depth is a complex task for the brain. It's a complex problem.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
In order to solve that complex problem, you need someone who have that cognitive flexibility, learn that cognitive flexibility. Would you say that if they learn every step in your model, they become cognitive flexible? If every behavior is now habitized, it's like you have a habit of doing all those behaviors. Would you say that we reach cognitive flexibility then?
I think they would build cognitive complexity over time. Because I don't think these behaviors can be mastered. I think they are directions, they are guides for action. So I don't think you can get to a place in your life where you're like, you know what, I have mastered greeting. Because the challenge of human relationship is that the tension between connecting and withdrawing is always going to be present. The tension, like if you look at disclosing, the fundamental tension of any relationship that people have to navigate and manage is the decision to reveal or conceal.
Yeah.
And that dialectic never goes away. So I think if you take a longer term perspective, what I would hope would happen is that people's communication skills would improve, right, over time. And as those communication skills improve, then they become more flexible. They become less dependent on the technique. So that is
Mm.
something we want people to do, right? At
Yes.
first, the technique feels like I'm forcing it. Then it
Mm.
becomes more integrated. Then it becomes more natural, and then you're a better communicator. And but more importantly, what I would hope would happen is as these communication skills improve, that the quantity of quality connections are increasing and improving as well. And that's what I really hope would happen for people. So if you practice this behavior right here,
Yeah.
what should happen is you should experience more meaningful moments of connections with people in your life or with people that you have not yet met with.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. I mean, it is a very complicated area. Communication with other people is, I mean, if we're going to look at how many different experiences people have, how the importance level of each experience is different, and so on. So I get the point that this is like indefinite information. I mean, it's just so much that mastering it is based not possible based on the number of people, number of situations, number of emotional feelings people have. I mean, it's like we just have to be proficient enough to be able to hold a great conversations that are meaningful. And
Sure.
those behaviors, which is similar to my behaviors as well, one coaching is like when you know that you are pretty well off the start, so to speak.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that leads us to the last point I want to mention. I want to talk with you, and that is about confidence. So many times I feel like confidence in conversations are based on competence and that practical.
Hmm.
What can I say? The practical knowledge that you have that you can actually execute things practically in a proficient way. Um, but I also noticed that many people have learned that in different theories, like in the pickup artist industry, for example, where they learn this instrumental language and they can execute it perfectly. One of the
Okay.
negative things is the reinforcement they get back. So if you get a lot of negative reinforcement, you suddenly have to overcome that with other type of mindset, like this is just a numbers game. If I talk with 100 women, I get one date, so I just go with this
Yeah.
100 women. But there
Right.
will be a huge conflict in the brain, because we need positive reinforcement in order for our brain to feel like what you're doing is right, what you're doing is
Hmm.
giving you the right feedback, the right response from the people you're talking to, and therefore you are good at what you're doing, and then the real confidence come up to the surface. So would
Yeah.
you say that applying listening skills, asking questions, going into depth, making the conversation collaborative and all that, would you say that that as a foundation always give a positive reinforcement as a rule of thumb, even though we have exceptions of the rule here and there? Would you say that that is like what build a great uh, connection with other people in terms of getting a positive reinforcement?
Yeah. I really like the connection you're making between the way you said it, kind of communication skills and confidence. And I do think, that communicating well is challenging because we do have mental barriers. And I'm actually working now, trying to work a little bit more on what we call intrapersonal communication. So the inner barriers, that the conversations we have within ourselves that actually become barriers for connecting with other people, right? They're there. And sometimes we lack the courage, and sometimes we lack the patience. Sometimes we lack the words. I mean, I've studied communication my whole life, and sometimes I
Mhm.
feel like I can't quite say the thing that needs to be said in the moment, right? So I'm still learning as a communicator, and I intend to do that. When I developed the model, so the way I think about it today is that confidence grows from practicing the behaviors.
Mm.
Does that make sense? So it's from the doing. Like, it's really hard to change. This is from research that I've done now around the world on personal
Mhm.
transformation. We know that it's really hard to change the way people feel about themselves. Like self-esteem, for example.
Mhm. Mhm.
We know that actually, as people age, they lose self-esteem. They don't gain it. It doesn't change. Lots of work that tries to intervene and change people's self-esteem. Self-esteem doesn't change. What changes is actually what we call self-efficacy. And that is the belief that you have that if you do something, it leads to positive outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. Different words,
so
but it's same, basically the
yeah,
same, I
same
think.
idea, but confidence
Yeah.
not in the sense of self-esteem, confidence in the sense of self-efficacy, like belief in
Mm.
myself, belief in who I am, and belief in what I am doing. So I'll try to give you an example here. If I'm initiating, let's say I'm disclosing to somebody and the other person chooses not to disclose. When I was first practicing with these behaviors, I would think to myself, well, it would be kind of a negative interpretation. Oh, the person is not interested in me. But now I don't think about it in that way at all. I think, you know what? I have made an offering. I have shared a little bit about myself, and maybe the other person is not ready. And that's okay. Do you see? So my sense of self now is not dependent upon what other people do. I think that's the danger, is to be shaped by the outcome. Instead, my sense of confidence, my sense of I have done I have done well is shaped by an evaluation of my ability to do what I intended on do it. So I do this with leaders as well, right? So
Mm.
let's say you're leading a difficult conversation as a business leader, and maybe it's a performance issue you're trying to address. You can do every skill perfectly, Michael, and the person can still be extremely angry with you. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
You
Yeah.
can't control that other person. So the person has their own responsibility for their communication. So what I try to teach these leaders is that does not mean the technique does not work. Because if we studied 100 examples, guaranteed that technique works a lot better than what you've been doing for the last 20
Yeah.
years.
And that is what I
Okay?
want to, that is
Yeah,
amazing thing that you said, because we're now talking about like the main rule, and there will always be the exception of the rule. But if we
that's
go
right.
to, if we're going to go and look at the main rule of what make relationship building best possible way, this is it. This is what the science have discovered since 1950s all the way up to now.
That's correct.
So all those models, we have very similar model. Everything about listening skills and all that. That is the thing that builds relationships. It's like the
That's right.
that's it. That is like the
That's not going to
foundation of
change.
it. Not
Yeah,
going to
and
change.
that's not
Yeah,
going to change. Your ability to engage in those behaviors will
yeah,
change. So that doesn't mean the technique is wrong or that the approach is wrong. It's just the other person is not ready and the other person is not willing.
yeah,
And that is their lives.
yeah.
So I want confidence. So when I think about my model, positive communication and being a good communicator, and when I work with my students or coaching,
Mm-mm.
I want the confidence to be in the choices that I am making,
Yeah. But don't you think that?
not
Oh,
the
yeah,
outcome.
not outcome. So the last thing, we will
Yep.
still say that the confidence is also based on like knowing that this is like the main, because I think that obviously you get confidence in doing and all that, but I
Sure.
do believe that there's something in your head that says to you that is what I'm doing actually the right thing, the thing that is the mainstream.
Sure.
So I think
Sure.
that once you know it as a mindset that what I'm learning now is the thing that is the most effective way to build relationships, and now I'm going to apply the behaviors in practical life. That is what gives the confidence, like I'm doing the right thing here. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, it does
you
require
balance
some
between those two.
faith, right? Like it
Yeah.
requires, I mean, I think when, well, I mean, that's what I'm seeing from my
Mm.
students and from my own experience is that once you start practicing these behaviors, you do see you'll see it immediately. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a student just 2 days ago who was at work. This is a kind of a workplace example, but she was taking a class in negotiation and she learned a technique in that class. And there was a situation at work and she was so proud of herself. She's like, I used the technique and it changed the conversation and it led to this positive outcome. So this is a good example. She practiced the behavior, it led to a positive outcome. Bring that in, let that in, build your confidence, knowing that it's not a foolproof technique, right? So just because it doesn't work one time doesn't mean that it's not more efficient than the rest of the techniques that you have at your disposal.
Yeah. All right, Julian, it's an honor to have you on this channel and show. It was a great conversation. And the last thing, if one want to get in contact with you, what is the best way to contact you if one of my audience are interested in whether buying your book? You can buy it from the Amazon, I guess.
So absolutely. So my books are available on Amazon. Probably my most popular is Positive Communication with Leaders. That has more of a leadership focus. But all of these ideas that I share with people today were written in the book called The Art of Positive Communication, Theory and Practice. And I have a brand new second edition coming in 2026. So look forward to that. Stay with me on LinkedIn. That's often a very good way of connecting with me, and also on my website, www.julienmirivel.com. And I would love to stay connected.
All right, guys, I will put his web address in the description, as well as his LinkedIn address. And Julien, thank you so much once more. And what can I say? Have a great day, and we keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Michael. Love to talk to you about communication always.
All right, bye.
Bye.